Kia ora, Shai. Happy Friday, TGIF.
I reckon 100%. Thank God it is nearly the end of level 3.
Have you got your drink?
No.
No. Where's your drink?
But I'm looking at yours and it looks really good, except that I'm guessing it's going to be kombucha again. Am I right?
Kombucha and whiskey. Yeah, that's my gig. What?
That's the thing.
But this is green tea kombucha. You might like it.
I just, it's just not my thing, but that's okay. You always enjoy it, so that's good.
You've tried kombucha.
Yeah, I've had, not yours, but I have had kombucha before.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I brew my own, of course, so it's better than anything you'll taste in the shops. Anyway, hey, TGIF, and you guys come out of lockdown midnight Sunday.
Thank God for that. I don't know about if there's any other Aucklanders watching, but I am over level 3.
What's the first thing you're going to do Monday? What's the first thing you're going to do?
Go visit my nana on Monday morning.
Go visit your nana?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, seriously, your nana? How old is she?
She's 96 and she's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
She's great.
Where's she?
She not far from me at all, like 20 minutes up the road, if that. So
yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. And when you say she's awesome, can you give us a story or anything? Like, is there anything?
Oh, like she still calls me out on everything all the time. So
well, what do you mean? She calls you out on what? Like the call out culture, like you don't use the appropriate pronoun or something.
I don't want to go down and overshare, but she, she does tease me a lot, so it's probably healthy.
She teases you a lot. Okay. Right.
It's great.
What did she think of you becoming the deputy leader of a political party?
I think there was a big eye roll at first.
Yeah.
And some joke about how I've always been on a soapbox anyway, so this makes sense.
Well, you've always needed that soapbox to height, haven't you? Sorry.
Thanks, Geoff. Thanks.
Sorry, it's too easy to go for that joke. Hey, okay, so that's cool. So you're going to go see your nana. That's just so sweet.
Yeah, but also I have I can't remember what time, I think 10 o'clock, my North Shore team and I are going flyering on Monday. So
cool.
We won't go door knocking as yet. It's too soon, but we will at least go out and do a big flyer drop. So that is planned for Monday. So
yeah, we haven't been door knocking.
Get back on the street.
We haven't been door knocking under level 2, but we've been getting all the flyers out. So it's been good from that respect.
Yeah.
And I was also going to say, Shai, we have Top has raised $10,000 in the past 2 days.
It's amazing.
48 hours.
Absolutely incredible. Like that just blows my mind how incredibly generous our supporters are.
And worth noting that up until this point, we haven't had a single donation over the threshold in terms of needing to be, what do they call it? Named, yeah, publicly named. So Top really is powered by lots of people giving small amounts, sometimes quite chunky amounts, but not super chunky amounts like most political parties. We're definitely not funded by wealthy donors that, which is the case for a lot of political parties. So we really are a movement, and thank you for being part of the movement.
It's amazing. And it really if anyone is watching and they want to really be all in, become a member, join Top and become a member because, we love all the support that we have, and we just want to bring you all into the community as well, our Top family.
Awesome. Good point. Yes. So you can go to the website to find out how to join up, and it's only $20. So, and of course that $20 will go to our electoral fund too. So, yeah, I mean, it's really heartwarming as to have that support, right? So, I mean,
it's
sometimes
incredible.
sometimes in the dark of the night when you're lying there, as I'm sure you do, Shai, I do sometimes, when you're thinking, oh gosh, we've got to do this or do that, and sometimes it's a pretty tough job, but to have moments like this where we feel so supported is just incredible.
It's amazing, and may as well take this opportunity to say a huge thank you and check in and thank you to all of our volunteers right across this country who spend countless hours every single week for free just because they believe that we can bring about a better New Zealand, and they care so deeply about the future of this country. And just thank you. I can't name everyone because I for sure would forget, tens of people. But specifically right now, this broadcast is brought to you by Adam and Josiah. So thank you to you two directly. Because, we literally couldn't be here without our volunteers.
Absolutely. 100%. We are totally powered by our volunteers each and every day. Everything you see coming out of top has volunteer input. That they're definitely doing most of the heavy lifting in this organization, and so thanks to everyone who gives their time. Like I said, Shai, we've been doing flyering down here in Wellington over lockdown, and just for my electorate, I had 10,000 letters printed, and they were all gone within a week. I had to go and print another 10,000 more. So
that's so good.
People are so keen to contribute. It's really, really appreciated.
That's amazing. Yes, I am also going to be picking up 15,000 letters on either Monday or Tuesday that will also be handed out around the North Shore. So that also came about from massive help, just volunteers reaching out, and somebody new, a family member who has given us an amazing deal as well. So we've had lots of little wins along the way, which has been pretty incredible.
Yes.
Because all of our candidates around the country are funding their own campaigns and doing their own fundraising and calling on donations. So if you are watching and you would just like to specifically donate maybe to your local candidate, feel free to do that as well.
Just get in touch. Okay, so on to questions, Shai. We are taking your questions. That's what we're here for. It's AMA. It's Friday, so we'll take the silly...
There's one for you there, Geoff. Have you brewed your own ginger beer before, Geoff? Matt would like to know.
No, I have never brewed my own ginger beer. See, here's the thing. I know people are, this is going to start a stream of comments, this very comment, but I try to minimize my sugar intake. And so the kombucha I brew is, I brew as much of the sugar out of it as I can. It's quite tart, a little bit vinegary, some might say. So yeah, the problem with ginger beer is it tends to be quite sweet, and sugar just doesn't agree with me. That's one of the things I try to...
They're like polar opposites, Geoff.
Yeah, why you're no? Well, I just have such a massive sweet look. The thing is, Shai, sugar is probably the most addictive substance I've ever come across.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. I am. This is horrible. People are going to judge me so harshly for this, but whatever. I'll tell you. Throughout most of my university degree, I had a V a day.
A V a day?
Yep.
Oh, right. That's nothing. What do you
really?
Yeah.
That's a long time. That's years.
Yeah.
It's like
I get
years
that.
of having a V a day.
Oh, 6 years. Wow. Yeah.
I was at uni for a long time.
It is pretty impressive. For a long time, I used to have sugary breakfast cereals. I used to have something for dessert after every lunch and after every meal, basically. There was sugar involved in every meal for me. And then, I wondered why I was putting on weight in my mid-30s. So yeah, I mean,
Sugar.
cutting sugar out has made a massive difference for me. So yeah, the short answer is no, I don't brew my own ginger beer.
Okay.
We do have a more substantial question here for you, Shai.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of a question, but it's also a bit of a rant. What's wrong with millennials? Why don't they understand how screwed over they've been and vote for parties which will shift taxes onto property speculators, forgiving student loans because this system has destroyed higher education and impoverished people with the only means of social mobility is self-improvement through education? Why do so many people like Labour? Why do so many people like Labour when they signed the TPP, created the massive boondoggle debacle of Kiwi Build, letting low-skilled immigrants into the country to do work that most of the country's civil servants should be doing? How can such appalling parties like Labour and National be popular without a massive investigation into the education system occurring?
Wowza, I don't know who that's from, but I love that rant. There's a lot in there, Thomas.
Yeah,
there's a lot in there.
There's a lot in there.
But I think the vibe, if I can just vibe it up.
Just vibe it, yeah.
Why do people keep voting in the two parties who have got us into this mess and keep thinking those exact same parties are going to finally fix these same problems that they have either created or exacerbated? Yeah, it's beyond me, Thomas. I don't know. It's really, really difficult to shift people who have either started out their voting lives, doubling down on this red-blue thing. And a lot of people, once you get started and you either identify as a Labour voter or identify as a National voter, not that many of them ever change. So it's out of habit. I mean, Geoff, you could probably talk about the research specifically into that, but ultimately, a lot of it is just habit forming and identity doubling down on who you think you are, and you ignore the outcomes.
Yeah, and also not just who you think you are, but also more who you hate. So, if you either, dislike, dole bludgers, or you dislike, capitalist pig dogs, then, you tend to identify more with the other side. It's who we don't like is actually a big driver of which team people choose. But yeah, I mean, I can kind of see why millennials don't even bother to vote, because if you look at the past 30 years, voting hasn't made any difference, right? I mean, Labour National doesn't really matter. We've had the same outcomes. But yeah, people really need to know that if they want change is possible, but you've got to vote, and you've got to vote different. So
it's a really hard one though, and it takes a while to get to make that realization. And as someone who used to be a swing voter, I fell into the whole, okay, this time I'm going to vote blue because red screwed up this, or this time I'm going to vote red because blue was screwing up this. But they can't fix each other's problems because they have the same policies mostly when it comes to those real fundamental issues.
And that comes down to the two-party system, right? Like, we're still stuck in the two-party system that we used to have under first past the post. The UK and the US and Australia are all stuck in that system as well. We need to shift out of that. If you look at most European democracies, they have 4 or 5 parties getting between 10 and 30% of the vote. And it's just much more of a nuanced, diverse conversation, because whenever you've got two parties going at it, you just got two positions, and it's I'm right, you're wrong.
Totally.
That is all that you hear out of a two-party system. If you have more perspectives, once you get 3 or more perspectives in a conversation, it just starts getting a bit more nuanced and interesting, and that's the kind of debate that we need in New Zealand.
And I don't think it helps that the media doubles down on this idea that it is either National or Labour, because that literally, the New Zealand public have voted in MMP twice now. So that doubling down of the media on this idea of it's two parties undermines what we've voted for, and also the actual system that we have. And even the fact that they have these televised debates with just National or Labour is just absurd. And it frustrates the hell out of me, because that is not the system that we have.
Yeah.
So why do they try and tell the public that? It just
Yeah.
really, really gets me, and I could probably rant on about that for a long time. So we should probably move on to some other questions.
It's lazy journalism. But in their defense, they don't have much time. Sam is telling me that I need my mic turned down a bit. Josiah, can you tell me if that's still causing a problem? Harry is asking, kia ora, Harry, what did you guys do before getting into politics? Shai, let us know. What did you do before getting into politics?
I was a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 7 years here in Auckland. I did civil litigation and I was a Crown prosecutor. And
Crown prosecutor? Isn't that what Simon Bridges did?
Just your classic prosecutor to politician story. Yes, that is correct. Though how I won't go down there. Anyway, yes, he was also of that role. Very different, obviously. I actually loved my job. Really, really loved my job. And it was really sad to leave, but I'd been there for 7 years and needed a change. And at the end of the day, it's a very ambulance at the bottom of the cliff kind of a job, as critical and crucial as it is, and it really is. You don't feel like I was changing the world. You just respond to problems after they've happened, and you don't stop more cases coming through the door. And it's really largely what kind of led me to top as well, because when I've been, looking around the last few years, neither National nor Labour were really focused on those underlying drivers of these problems.
Yeah.
So that's me. Geoff, what did you do before top?
I was an economist. So I've worked in Treasury, worked overseas, in economic development overseas, and I also ran the Morgan Foundation, which was a think tank basically here in New Zealand before I moved into politics. So yeah, economics, research, all that sort of stuff, researching New Zealand's biggest problems. So yeah, it was in some ways it was a simple transition into politics because I'd been talking about policy for a long time, but there's also a lot of there's also a lot of the dark side of politics that you can't prepare for. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
And you've written 4 books.
Written 4 books, yeah, that was a thing. Things.
That was a thing. Just casually. I've seen a comment somewhere from, where is it?
Rebecca, she's in Onehunga. How and where can I get involved with TOP? You can volunteer on our webpage, Rebecca, top.org.nz. I'm just trying to think. Onehunga is Maunga Kia. So yeah, I'm not sure where the closest candidate is to that. Might be Epsom, actually.
Probably.
Adriana Christie in Epsom. You could contact her directly as well. Yes.
Okay. Question from Cam. Hi, Cam. Have you noticed lots of people getting top on top when they take the online questionnaire policy.co and I side with etc.? Interesting. Okay. No, I didn't know that.
I have noticed that. I've noticed a lot of people saying that, and I've had a lot of people say that to me. Yes. Yeah, people are getting this stuff, and that's great. It shows that these sites are working, right? I mean, the sort of stuff that we are talking about, the policies that we're talking about do resonate with Kiwis. It's just that a lot of them haven't heard of TOP, or as we were saying before, they've habitually voted for National Labour and haven't really questioned that. So yeah, I've had quite a few people contacting me and saying, what the hell? I always thought you were full of it, but now I can see that I did this questionnaire. It told me to vote TOP. And now I've looked at your policies and I can see they're actually quite good. So yeah, I mean, these questionnaires are not, not perfect. Nothing ever is perfect because, parties can say that they find, they think something's important, but then the policy they might put forward, like Kiwi Build, right? I mean, before the last election, Labor was saying that house prices are out of control and we need to get them under control. And so all of the policy sites would have said that, if you cared about housing, you should vote Labor. But they were putting forward a policy which was never going to work, Kiwi Build, and it didn't work. So, actually, there is another stage to this stuff that I encourage people, once you, do these sorts of questionnaires, it's worth doing a little bit more research for yourself to actually see if the policies are going to work, because Kiwi Build was never going to happen.
Geoff, why was it never going to work? Because I feel like we're going to get some questions about that.
Oh, well, people can ask me about that for sure. Because affordable housing requires affordable land is the basic reason. And unless you are going to make, unless you're prepared to make the fundamental changes which will bring down the cost of land, then you're never going to fix the housing problem. So that requires looking at the tax system, encouraging land bankers to actually develop their land, and freeing up some of the regulation, which recently Labor has actually realised and has started to do. So we released our housing policy earlier on this year, and Labor have already adopted some of those things with the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. So it's good to see we're making progress with some of these issues already, but there's still a lot more to do. Right. What more? Joe is asking, can you explain your high-level policy on climate change mitigation, especially regarding New Zealand agriculture? So again, like with all things, Joe, our policy on climate change mitigation is to do what works. The great irony of Labor and the Greens is that they have trumpeted setting up this Zero Carbon Act, which created something called the Climate Change Commission. The first report that the Climate Change Commission came out with has been ignored by Labor and the Greens in terms of their policy, because solar panels are sexy, and because building a hydro scheme down in the South Island, a pumped hydro scheme sounds sexy, and 100% renewable energy sounds sexy. But actually what this report said was, don't bother with 100% renewable energy. We are on track to improve our electricity generation. The lowest hanging fruit is transport. And that is exactly what we would focus on at top: energy efficiency, process heat, and transport. So energy efficiency, we need to make sure that homes and businesses are efficient with their energy. It saves money, it saves power, it saves the planet. It's absolute no-brainer, but for some reason politicians don't want to talk about it because it's not sexy enough. So that would be our number one focus. Number two is transport. That's all about investing in public and active transport, and about getting the fringe benefit tax off low emissions vehicles. So that's electric vehicles and bikes. Let's get the fringe benefit tax off that stuff, so it's cheaper for people to use those particular vehicles. And it means that we'll see more of them around, and they'll become cheaper to buy because they'll be on the second-hand market. And
I think that's a good point. Oh, sorry, you keep going.
Yeah.
You finish.
Oh, okay. And the last point on so that was energy efficiency, climate change, and transport. And also we need to, the point around, you've asked specifically about agriculture. The most important thing we can do with climate and with our water supply is to just ease back on the intensity of agriculture, and to make sure that all of our erosion-prone land and our riverbanks are planted in natives, okay? At the moment, the way that the government has set up the emissions trading scheme, all we're going to see for the next 5 years is people planting pine trees. Now, don't get me wrong, if pines make sense, good business sense, that's fine, but we shouldn't be using that. We shouldn't be using pines to cover our fossil fuel emissions. We need to get fossil fuel emissions down, and so we shouldn't be incentivizing people to plant pine trees for climate change reasons. So ease back on the intensity of agriculture, plant natives on the erosion prone land and riverbanks. Oh, and lastly, process heat. We need to get the carbon price up. That'll stop people using coal, and will give us the money to invest in all the other stuff I've been talking about.
Totally, and great points, Geoff. But on the pine tree point, I think we need to be really careful that there isn't this movement towards this idea that we can just plant our way out of this climate crisis, when that alone isn't going to change business behavior. That alone isn't going to stop businesses being these high polluters, high carbon users.
It's absolutely madness. It's because planting pines is only a temporary solution to a permanent problem that we've got. So all we're doing is kicking the can down the road, and we're going to be, dealing with this problem in 10, 20 years time again. Let's fix it once and for all.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we need to make sure that businesses' behavior is financially incentivized to change. And they will have to do that when the carbon price keeps going up and you get to that tipping point where it is cheaper for them to not emit all the carbon that they've been emitting in their business practices.
Yeah. Question from Laura. What do you guys think we can do to make engaging in politics easier and less intimidating to people? What do you mean? Am I intimidating you, Laura? Am I intimidating?
Well, you are kind of now, Geoff. I think that's a really fair question. And I mean, I guess it depends what kind of engagement people feel comfortable with, right? Some people would be happy to get out on the street and just drop a bunch of flyers, which would be amazing. And that would have a huge impact for our campaign. Just feet on the ground has a huge impact. So not every type of engagement has to be that kind of front-facing role kind of thing. Yeah. Or people who are really keen can kind of have that. So I think, Laura, what I would suggest to people is, honestly, if they can, if there is a candidate in the area, reach out to them and just get involved in their campaign and just get that firsthand kind of experience about what it looks like. And it won't seem as intimidating because there are so many different parts to a campaign.
Yeah. And I also think, just to call back to a previous conversation we had about the two-party system, I think the two-party system is what makes politics so, it's like, it's which side are you on? And
so toxic.
And are you on my side? Either you're with me or you're against me, and it's all the time. And I think that's why we need to change that culture, and to say, look, it should be okay for me to agree with you on one issue and not agree with you on another. We have to stop being so tribal about this stuff and be prepared to talk about ideas. And that's really what TOP is all about. And don't be afraid to be wrong. I mean, I've been wrong. Ask me if you want me to talk more about that. Examples of many ways I've been wrong.
But honestly, I think because it is so rare, right, for people to come out, especially on social media, even just in the comments, to say, actually, you know what, I was wrong. But when people do, like, they might come back and they might edit a post, and I have seen this repeatedly where they have actually, which hat off to them, because it's scary to do that and edit your post and say that you are changing your position because you've gone away and researched, or you've taken into account what people have been saying. That's incredible, and that should be encouraged. And actually, the response on those types of comments is really positive, and people get behind those kind of people, because we are all on this journey to learn and grow, and you do not start out on day one with all the right answers.
Oh, that's beautiful, Shai. That's beautiful, and that's exactly the kind of attitude we need in Parliament. Like, it shouldn't be this big deal to be able to, to back down and admit that you're wrong. I mean,
especially because, things like science and evidence, it changes and evolves as new information is learned or sought and reviewed. Take masks, for example. Okay, sure. the WHO did not recommend their use 5 months ago, and the evidence and analysis has moved on, and on balance, they've fallen down on the yes, masks are better. So we in turn have changed our course, and it's great listening to the evidence, and if it changes, you need to change with it.
And plus, like, masks are cool, right? I mean, look at Darth Vader.
Yep, okay.
So, some quick questions here. This is good. Ban sugar or tax it? From Cam.
Tax it.
Tax it, yeah.
Don't take away my V, just make me pay more for it.
Yeah, exactly. Help cover the health costs for you when you have a heart attack at 50 from all the V's you've had. Craig is asking, will you be announcing any more candidates? When does the party list get released? We do have another candidate, at least one, to announce, that announcement will be made next week, and the party list will get released after that.
And I know that we had said that we would make an announcement, I think a week ago, we signaled it, but obviously maybe a week and a half ago now, but obviously with what's been going on with COVID, etc., we've pushed that back, but
yeah,
he's still there. So
Chris's comment, which I think is very pertinent to what we've been talking about, there's a mentality that when the party you vote for wins, you also win. Yeah, this is not
it's interesting,
horse racing, folks. It's not sports betting. It's politics. It's like, what ideas do you want to actually see in Parliament?
I think, but it's a really fair comment, right? Because people do feel like that. Yay, my team got and I won. But what I would really like to ask those people, especially let's start with people who voted Labour last time, and those who voted Labour last time because they thought that Labour would deal with unaffordable housing, right? Those specific people. Do they feel right now that they won? Yes, they voted Labour, and yes, Labour is the government. But since the outcomes haven't changed, do they actually feel like they've won? Have they actually won? Because what they voted for, affordable housing, hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. Outcomes.
Yep. Meg has a question. I need to buy a car, keen on the option of a used EV. Should I wait until after the election to see if the subsidy proposal gets revived? I can't see it on the Green Party policy website either. Meg, to be honest, used cars aren't going to get subsidised, it would be new ones. I would think that, so it's going to take a few years for any policy to filter through to the used market. So if you need to buy a car, I would not wait personally. But unless you run your own business, in which case you might be able to benefit from any fringe benefit tax removal on an EV. But I think it applies to new EVs, so I don't think that would help. Question from Mike. Hello, I'm liking many of Top's ideas, but I don't want to waste my vote on a one-term party. There's many ways to waste your vote, isn't there? As New Zealand's next Prime Minister and New Zealand's next Minister of Justice,
is he referring to?
I think he is, yeah. What useful changes will you be steamrolling through New Zealand's electoral law during your first 100 days to ensure that Top becomes democratically entrenched and dominant in New Zealand's parliament for the decades to come? Or if this somehow doesn't come to pass, unlikely, what changes do you think would be important for someone else to make?
Well, can I start?
Yeah, as Minister of Justice.
Okay. So what changes does our electoral law need? I think the starting point would be to pick up the Electoral Commission's recommendations as to the changes that are needed that they made 8 years ago in 2012. That changed to our MMP system, things around lowering the threshold, things around dealing with the coattailing. We need to make the system fairer. So first of all, follow the independent recommendations. I also would want to
see... Of the MMP review, you mean?
Sorry, the MMP review. Thanks, Geoff. Yep. From 8 years ago that no political party has picked up. I also would want to see a complete review of our donations system at the moment. As Geoff always says, you can literally drive a truck through the rules, and there's little wonder why 3 of our major parties are under or have already been charged with SFO charges. So I would like to see us look at the Canadian model for donations, where they're actually limited to amounts that is seen to be within the realm of what a ordinary citizen could afford to pay, and not this unlimited free-for-all that means the wealthy can infiltrate the political system and exert extra influence that ordinary citizens would never hope to have. Those are just a couple that popped to mind. And we would have to start the conversation about a written constitution in those first 100 days. I'm not going to promise that we would pass it. You would never in a million years do that, but we would need to get the ball rolling on that.
Yes, 100% Shai. That is fantastic. I mean, from my perspective, the first priority of anything of the next government has to be around housing, around getting the cost of housing under control. That's about, that requires reform of our tax system. It requires reform of our planning system, the RMA. It also requires reform of local government funding so that local government has the money to spend on the infrastructure that's needed, like water infrastructure, like public transport infrastructure, and that they have an incentive to invest for growth. So there's some massive issues there. Getting the community housing sector going, improving renters' rights, all that sort of stuff needs to happen as an urgent priority to get the cost of housing under control, the cost of house prices and rents, because we've had 30 years of house prices and rents growing faster than incomes. We need to hold house prices and rents stable for another 30 years to restore that affordability. So I think that's crucial in terms of, needing to steamroll that through Parliament. I know you're asking about electoral law, but Shai's already answered all that. So I'm just going to talk about what I think needs to happen. Comment from Rebecca. Parties like Labor are on the marketing bandwagon on social media and only campaigning on stuff that will be most appealing online, especially for the millennial, especially for clickbait. And of course, they have an incredibly popular leader, so they're going to focus on that. But it's every party is doing it this election. COVID has given people a license to print money and to splash it about. So everyone is doing it, and the evidence doesn't matter. Look at the Green Party promising, solar panels on everyone's roofs. We know that the big problem with New Zealand's electricity system is peak demand, meeting peak demand, and peak demand is 6 p.m. in the middle of winter, which will be in about an hour's time. There's no solar power at 6 p.m. in the middle of winter. It's the most stupid idea. And again, solar, like pine trees, solar have their place. Solar has its place, particularly in the north of the country, but it's not a system-wide solution to these sorts of things. Right, where are we? More questions.
I just lost my... okay, one for you, Geoff.
Yes.
From Jacob. Do you think the recent events of COVID-19 and lockdown could cause a big change in the way people vote, or even open people's eyes to the possibility of other parties being in power, or do you think it won't matter?
Oh, I think absolutely, yes. I think, partly because Labor has managed this crisis fairly well, and partly because National have imploded, it's pretty clear that Labor is going to win the election. And I think that's going to open up, once the next poll comes out, I think that will change the conversation to be less about Labor versus National. It's going to be much more about who do you want to partner Labor in the next government. And that will be a substantially different conversation, because I really do believe that TOP is the best partner for Labour in the next government. And, there'll be a lot of people that will be, less focused on which of the red and blue is going to get in, and more people thinking, okay, Labor's going to be leading the government. Who do we want with them to make sure we keep them honest, to make sure that they are doing stuff to take the country forward, but that those actions are evidence-based and what works, rather than just splashing cash around as we see from the likes of New Zealand First, for example. So I think there's room for absolutely room for TOP to come steaming through the middle once we enter the election period. Question for Shai: what are your thoughts on the current family law system? Seems very unfair to me. From Sam. I don't know if this is anything you have much experience of, Shai.
Sam, I worked in criminal law, so I was never a family lawyer. I didn't work in family law. In saying that, I have just asked a family law expert to put together a policy statement for us on a couple of issues. So there are definitely some areas in that system, especially around one issue we were talking about recently was around legal aid, for example, that if you're just over the threshold that you would get financial support, you have to then find your own lawyer, which you probably still can't afford. So, the second that oranga tamariki is involved in a case, for example, we're asking the question, should there not be automatically legal aid involved to ensure that there is fair representation, as an example. But yeah, so I can't really fairly answer your question, Sam, because it's just not my area of law. I just didn't work in it. But I know there are issues, so we're looking into it. Okay, Geoff, one from Josephine. What would you do about affordable dentistry? I'm very concerned that it's the first thing lower income households give up, but I understand Labour's plans to address this have been scuppered by the COVID recovery.
If you believe Labour was going to do something about it, sure. They were certainly very evasive on this subject at Waitangi. I remember this being raised on the paipai at Waitangi, and the Labour ministers being really dodging that particular issue. But absolutely, it's a massive issue, and like so much of our health system, it creates further costs because we don't invest in prevention and early intervention, catching these problems early. They just create further costs down the line. And dentistry is a fantastic example of that. It's, a lot of these people end up in our hospital system. We end up having to treat them. Some people with dental issues end up getting lifetimes of health problems as a result. Heart conditions can come from poor dental health. So there's all sorts of stuff that comes out of this, and it makes sense to invest early. Like so much of our health system, it makes sense to catch the problem early and to invest early in prevention. And we're going to be talking more about that, Josephine. I'm not going to tell you exactly what we're going to propose, but watch this space. All right. Another question for... this is more of a comment, just nicely said regarding the climate stuff, energy efficiency and public transport. So unsexy, though. Shai, how do you feel about that when so much of what is sensible to do is deeply unsexy in our society? Like, how do you feel about that?
It's true. I mean, there's just no getting around it, right? A lot of it is boring, and if it wasn't, the other parties would probably be doing it more. And what sexy buys votes, right? So there's a very good reason why they choose the policies that they choose, and that's not why we choose the policies that we choose.
Yes, true. Oh, here's another one for you, Shai, from Nick. Would the upper house from the Democracy Reset policy help mitigate things like the government not listening to the Electoral Commission re the 5% minimum? I don't really understand that policy well.
We are review. It's our Democracy Reset is coming back out updated very soon, just as an aside. But in terms of things like that, no, it wouldn't, because it would be a constitutional check, and an independent review wouldn't really necessarily of itself be a constitutional issue until it's brought into the fray effectively.
That's right. But I mean, I guess having an upper house or having a futures commission or something like that would mean that you would have independent people who would be reminding the public regularly that the government hadn't done these things.
Well, right. And why doesn't the Electoral Commission have a louder voice about that? Because what is the point of having these reviews, all the millions of dollars that go into them, then they give it to the politicians who throw it in the too hard basket or the I don't want to do it basket, and then that's it. And why doesn't the Electoral Commission feel that it's their place to then say, hang on a second, well, we're just going to go and launch public campaign then and tell them about the $1 million review that we just did, or multi-million-dollar review that we just did, because they did it for us. It was on our money, on our time. It's our information.
That's right.
So just because the politicians don't listen to it, it's not their information to own, actually. It's our information to own.
Yeah.
So it's
a public service that serves the public, Shai. Yes.
Go figure, right? What a crazy idea that is. It's so radical.
Question from Claire. Thoughts on 16-year-olds being able to vote?
I very much support this. Actually, Geoff, I don't even think you and I have actually spoken about this issue directly.
Is it not in our Democracy Reset policy? I thought it was.
Or maybe it is. But
I don't know.
I haven't.
Anyway, it should be. It should be, because I totally agree with you, Shai. I think it's fantastic. It makes sense to hook people into democracy while they are still at school, right? And to put the support around them. You know, as long as there is that civics education going on, I think that has to come hand in hand with this sort of stuff.
And we've seen it overseas where they do turn out to vote in higher numbers in the age bracket above them. And the evidence shows that once you start voting, you're more likely to continue to vote. Once you start not voting, you're more likely to continue to not vote. So it's all about habit forming, getting them to be directly engaged in democracy earlier and get that habit to be formed. So we should definitely do this.
Yeah. Question from Gemma. Can you share any fundamental policy proposals / strategy regards managing immigration? We do have an updated immigration policy coming out soon too, Gemma. I mean, I can say at a very high level that we still absolutely support doing our bit on refugees, you know, particularly with our Pacific cousins, with the huge climate change impacts that are hitting the Pacific region. We're going to have to play a role in terms of climate refugees in the Pacific region. So we definitely think, you know, there is a lot more room to do our bit on the refugee side. On the economic side, we should make sure that people coming into the country benefit all New Zealanders. And I think it's been quite clear that successive governments have allowed a lot of unskilled labour into the country who have been exploited, and so it's not good for the immigrants and it's not good for the local labour because it's keeping wages down in those sort of less skilled jobs. So there needs to be a review there of what we define as, you know, as skilled labour or the kinds of jobs that we need to bring in from overseas, because that whole system is out of date. What?
Okay, I've got a question for you here, Geoff. What are the things, or what's
Matt's accusing me of a dad joke. I'm assuming
I don't know. Remember, maybe you did make a dad joke.
I'm not even a dad, Matt. That's quite hurts.
And I don't remember it, so I don't know how good it was. Okay, what are the Geoff, what are the things that you have changed your mind about because the evidence proved otherwise?
I didn't swear just then. I was saying I'm a fun uncle. It's a funkle.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't,
Sure.
you gave me a disapproving.
Did I? No, I was reading.
All
Maybe it was
right,
my
sorry.
concentrating face.
Where have I changed my mind? Well, I got schooled the other day because I did a rant about identity politics, and someone pointed out to me that I was conflating identity politics and the call out culture, and what I really should have been ranting about was the call out culture. So, we're all learning, which is good. But I think the really big thing that I've changed my mind on over the last 3 years is around this whole thing of pine trees being used to offset carbon emissions. And what changed my mind was the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment's report, Farms, Forests and Fossil Fuels. If you like policy and you're into environmental stuff, you have to look at this report. It's groundbreaking, and it came out in New Zealand. It's being talked about around the world. And the first time you look at it, you'll go, I don't like this. I don't like what it's saying, because it's telling us that actually we need to focus much more on getting fossil fuels down. We don't need to worry so much about agricultural emissions in the short term, and that it makes much more sense to use to use trees as an offset for agricultural emissions rather than for fossil fuel emissions. And honestly, the first time you read it, it will blow your mind, but let it sink in, and it'll really reframe the whole way that you look at our emissions trading scheme. It really is groundbreaking stuff, and it really changed my perspective on using pine trees as a way to cover our blushes when it comes to fossil fuel emissions. We absolutely need to get fossil fuel emissions down as soon as possible, and that's very much, this report is very much the cornerstone of our policy now in 2020, which is different from how it was in 2017. So I would say that's one massive piece of evidence that has really changed my perspective on a massively important issue. So yeah, check it out. How about you, Shai? What things have you changed your mind about because of the evidence proved otherwise?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this and I read the question before. Prisoner voting, to be honest with you, a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was very against prisoners voting and was quite happy that they lost their right to vote, because in my mind at that time, I just thought, well, they have done an offence that the justice system has deemed appropriate to take them out of society. So why should they be involved in any decision making that affects society, right? That was kind of my thinking at the time. And then I started to think about, well, actually, what outcomes do I care about most? I care most that when they leave, they're not going to reoffend, that their reoffending rates drop. That is what I care about most. And so I started looking into the research more, and ultimately, people who come out of prison who are able to be more engaged with society and feel more connected in the community and have a stake and feel that they have a stake in the outcomes in their community. That sense of connection means that they're less likely to offend in that community.
Wow.
So when I realized that my priority is lower recidivism, I realized I had to change my thinking. And I wrote a submission earlier this year in support of, on behalf of TOP, in support of prisoners getting the right to vote back, because that's so important. So that was a huge mind shift, I guess, for me over the last few years.
Yeah. That's great to hear, Shai. And I read that submission and it was very good. We've probably got time for one more question each, and they're right here. So your one is, and I'll give you a minute to think about it. Your one is from Meg. Why do we need a written constitution? USA has one, and look at them. And my one is from Rebecca. Can we start restricting overseas companies taking water from New Zealand, especially prone to drought regions and or actually making them pay, so it's actually adding to our economy, not just giving it away for free. Also, why won't the media give airtime to this? There was one company caught drilling into the Christchurch city supply, was reported once and never talked about again. Interested to know your thoughts. 100%, Rebecca. I totally agree with this. It's a massive bugbear of mine as well. In my opinion, all commercial water users should be paying for the water that they use, particularly water bottlers, because obviously they're taking the best quality water, which is what you're pointing to. The issue is that before anyone will pay for water, we have to move past this myth that nobody owns water, because as soon as people start paying for it, it does suggest that people own water. Of course, if you've got water in a water bottle and you're exporting it, it's pretty clear you own the water, right? So it's a complete farce. But the government has for years perpetuated this myth that nobody owns water. And the reason that they've done that, a little secret between you and me, Rebecca, is because they don't want to bring up the issue of Māori water rights, because that is political dynamite. It's pretty clear that if we start looking at who owns water, it is pretty clear from the treaty that Māori have rights over our fresh water. So if we were to start charging people for our fresh water, then we would have to resolve those Māori treaty rights, and which would mean giving them a share of the income, most probably. Now, I have absolutely no problem with that, and I think it's a grown-up conversation that New Zealand needs to have. Let's resolve these treaty issues, and so that we can actually get on with managing our fresh water in a reasonable fashion, which means we can start deciding who we let use it and making sure that the people who are using it pay for it, on the commercial side at the very least. So totally agree with where you're coming from, and there's the reason why none of the political parties, Labour, the Greens, and New Zealand First at the last election all promised to charge water bottlers. That disappeared in a puff of smoke, and the reason for that is treaty rights. So your question, Shai, was around a written constitution.
Mm-hmm. So we currently do have a constitution. It's just unwritten, and it is scattergun across a number of different pieces of legislation and the treaty and custom and cabinet manual and letters patent, the authority from the Queen to our Governor General. It's just all over the show. And it also means that most people don't really understand what their constitutional rights are, and more importantly, the rights that they think are really well protected, i.e. the Bill of Rights, are no more protected than any other normal piece of legislation. Sorry if that is shock to anyone, but tomorrow, as unlikely as this is, the system technically would allow Parliament tomorrow to completely change any of the Bill of Rights because they're not entrenched. So we want to make sure that we have a constitution that works for the people, that once you have it all written down in one place, people have a much better understanding of their rights, and that is power sits under the constitution. So the people are in a much better position to keep checks on power if they know what the power is meant to be. I think that's if I was to simplify it down, I think that's one of my strongest points in favor of a written constitution, basically, because it doesn't allow you to keep better check on power. Yes. In theory. And I think it's good that Meg, that you've mentioned the US, because we've seen how it has acted as a complete handbrake, and it is not used in a very productive way that we see often. It is not flexible. It was written 300 years ago and it hasn't changed. A great recommendation by, again, we haven't released ours yet, but I'll just say as an example, in Sir Geoffrey Palmer's suggestion, it comes with a 10-year review, so every 10 years, and you would decide how long you think is appropriate, but the point is it would have to be reviewable regularly. And I know that I've probably lost a bunch of people, because when you start talking about constitutions, everybody falls asleep because it's so boring, and I get it, but it matters. Because in theory, everything exists under the umbrella of a constitution. How Parliament set up, what powers we choose to give them. We, the people, choose to give them what we want to, right? So it actually does matter. And I'm sorry that it's a boring topic, but it is what it is. We are going to have a national conversation at some point about it, and in a way that actually respects the treaty properly as the founding document on which we all live. Oh, okay. So thank you. I'll just wrap that part up. But thank you, Josiah has just reminded me that tonight, so we haven't talked about COVID really, because tonight, Dr. Ben Peters, our candidate in Dunedin, is going to be doing a live. I'll be here doing a live with him, asking him your COVID questions. So please tune in if you would like to ask. Maybe you're sick of hearing the same myths, but you're not quite sure how to respond to them. Ben can tell you how.
Awesome. Good luck with that, Shai. I'm going to go out to dinner. It's date night for me.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go, or is it a surprise?
I can't answer that question. Yeah, no.
Oh, because you don't want people to stalk you and go to the same restaurant. Yeah, cool.
No, it's really embarrassing. But
okay, maybe don't tell us then. It's fine. We'll just move on.
Yeah. No. Oh no. I'll tell you. We're going to a restaurant in Wellington called Mama Brown's. So we each get a choice over where we go, alternate choices. And my my partner she's a real foodie and she loves good food, and so we go to lots of really nice restaurants. And Mama Brown's is like this southern US, like fried chicken and gravy and all that
amazing.
Sort of stuff. Oh no, it's terrible. It's terrible food. But this is just me giving myself a little treat. So
you deserve it, Geoff. You've been working very hard.
Thanks. All right. Ka kite, Shai.
Take care. Enjoy your weekend.
Yes. Have a great weekend, everyone. And yeah, get those questions coming in for Ben tonight. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, totally. Cool. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Look after yourselves.
Ka kite ano.